Hello, everyone, and welcome to Island's online investor briefing. My name is Sheree Hartley. I work with the IR department, and it's a pleasure to support Island Pharmaceuticals on investor relations. Joining me this morning, we have Island's new Executive Chair, Mr. Philip Lynch, Non-Executive Director, Mr. Chris Toumanopoulos, and Island's CEO and Managing Director, Dr. David Foster. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So the format for this morning is that David will provide an update on the positive Safety Review Committee findings from the Phase 2A component of Island's Phase 2AB clinical trial in dengue fever, as announced very excitedly to the market earlier this morning. After that, we'll open up the floor for a Q&A. So if you'd like to ask a question, you can do so by using the Q&A ribbon, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen. And with that, I'll now pass over to David for his presentation. Thank you.
Sheree, thank you very much. Phil and Chris, thank you for being here and joining. And for those of you watching, thank you for logging in to see the update. I'm very excited to give you this update, tell you what's going on. I think we're all pretty excited about what's going on today. So I'll start with a brief background and make sure we're all on the same page. I'll then go into the clinical trial design, and then we'll talk about what happened today with the decision from the Safety Review Committee. As I suspect we're all aware, Island Pharmaceuticals is an antiviral therapeutics company. We are focused on developing drugs for infectious diseases. We have a lead program called ISLA 101. We're pursuing against dengue infections. It's a huge problem, and I'm excited to tell you that we've gotten some really exciting results. But if we take a step back and say, what is Island really focused on? What we like to do is focus on programs where we can be running clinical trials. We want molecules to come to us that are in our pipeline, that are small molecules that have clinical history. They have completed phase 1 safety studies. The idea with this is that we can move very quickly into phase 2 clinical trials, which is really where you see significant value inflection points. There's not that many phase 2 companies, even on the ASX today, and I'm proud to say that we are one today. We like programs that have open INDs where we may be able to get non-dilutive money. And where there may be a priority review voucher opportunity. I won't go into the PRV opportunity today, except to say it's a very nice commercial opportunity that we are currently eligible for with ISLA 101 that we would get upon approval of the drug. But we like the idea of having rapid paths to market. At a glance, again, we're developing ISLA 101 against dengue. There's 400 million dengue infections a year. About 100 million of those require some form of intervention, and there's really no intervention. You can treat these folks symptomatically, but that's about it. There's no small molecule that you can use as an antiviral. The vaccines, at best, are problematic and challenging. People are working, but it's been a long process to develop vaccines. And again, they're really challenging and, in fact, unsafe in some instances. Because there's so many people and there's so few countermeasures for dengue, there's huge market opportunity, and we recognize that, but we really view this as an opportunity to help a lot of people. Some of the reason that we're very excited about ISLA 101 and always have been is the robust preclinical package that we had, and the data that we had came from a lab at Monash University, where in addition to some phenomenal biochemistry and cell biochemistry work, they've done animal studies where they obtained very positive results in animal models of a dengue infection. Soon after that, a group at Harvard published nearly identical work. So having two world-class labs, unbiased, looking for molecules that had activity against the dengue virus and coming up with the same molecule and then really doing the same set of experiments gave us huge confidence that what we were seeing was a real result. And in fact, one of the things we think about is it's great to see animal work, but how does that translate into humans? There's always a big leap between going from animal studies to positive results in human clinical trials. And we'll talk about that here in a second. So I think you're all aware our phase 2A clinical trial is underway, has been underway. One of the things we like is considering other pipeline expansion opportunities. I suspect many of you are aware of galidesivir, which is a molecule that we're very excited about. That's all I'm going to say about galidesivir today. This is really an ISLA 101 update, and I want to focus on that. But just if you look at the right of this slide, look at the number of cases of dengue in just 2024. It's astronomical. Worst year on record. In fact, I'm sitting in Texas right now. Today, we announced the first locally acquired dengue case in South Texas this year, which is, it's alarming. It's dengue showing up in places that it's really not been seen before, and it's moving at an alarming rate. So what is ISLA 101? I suspect many of you are aware ISLA 101 is a molecule that has been in the clinic for many, many years. It has a well-known safety profile, and we have data, as I've mentioned, demonstrating that it is effective against all 4 strains of dengue, as well as Zika, West Nile, yellow fever, all of these flaviviruses, these mosquito-borne viruses. We have numerous experiments in cell culture data. We have a variety of animal models, in fact, showing that ISLA 101 is protective against dengue infections as well as Zika infections. And again, this stuff comes from 2 world-class labs, so we're excited about that. As you all know, we've completed our own dose escalation study earlier this year. That was very important for us because it gave us an idea into the dose that we need to use to achieve an appropriate blood concentration that we expect to be effective against the dengue virus in humans in our phase 2 clinical trial. And so that is the dose that we used. So the phase 2 study we've called it the PROTECT study. And again, as a reminder, this is a challenge study. By challenge study, what I mean is we enroll healthy individuals, and then we expose them or infect them with an attenuated strain of the dengue virus. This is a virus that was developed by the US Army. It was going to be a vaccine. It turns out it was a little too hot. It made people a little bit sick. Not terribly sick, but they have detectable clinical dengue, and they show signs and symptoms associated with a mild dengue infection. When we saw that they were doing these studies, we reached out to the Army and asked if we could put ISLA 101 in that clinical trial or using that model and see if we could either prevent or treat a dengue infection. And graciously, they said yes. So we're now working with the US Army on this clinical study. They've given us the virus. They're giving us data out of some of the studies they've already run. And in exchange, we're going to give them the data out of our clinical trial. I think they're going to be pretty happy with what they see. The primary endpoint for the studies that we're doing is measuring viremia after a challenge with this challenge virus. And by viremia, I mean the virus level in these individuals' blood. And I'll show you a slide in a minute showing you what that looks like and what we think the results of this study that we just concluded also look like. Secondary endpoints would be signs and symptoms associated with a dengue infection, looking at safety as we always do, ensuring that ISLA 101 is safe. So then we will go through the trial design. So if you look on the left here, this is the study that we've just concluded. This is the phase 2A prophylactic preventative cohort. There's 4 individuals in this cohort. 3 of them are on ISLA 101. 1 of them is a placebo control. So we enrolled these individuals and then pre-treated them for 3 days with ISLA 101. We then exposed them to the virus, continued treating them for about 20 days. These individuals came to the hospital every day or every other day where we took blood samples from them. And we announced maybe a couple of weeks ago that we had concluded obtaining data samples from all of those first 30 individuals. We sent those samples off to analytical labs to be analyzed. And fortunately, we were able to get those data back. We've had a meeting with the Safety Review Committee. And we asked the Safety Review Committee if you'll tell us, does ISLA 101, is it safe? Do you see evidence of antiviral activity as indicated by a reduction in viremia or reduction in viral load? And then did we achieve the blood concentration of ISLA 101 that we were aiming for? If the answer to those questions was yes, then the Safety Review Committee would recommend that we move to the phase 2B cohort, which is what we have here on the right. The phase 2B cohort is a therapeutic cohort where we first infect these individuals with the weakened strain of the dengue virus. A week later, we will treat them with ISLA 101 and continue treating for the next 14 days or so. Again, these folks will come in, we'll take blood samples, and again, we'll look, is there a reduction in viral load? Or is there a reduction in the signs and symptoms associated with a dengue infection? So we're very happy to announce that we have had the meeting with the Safety Review Committee. They have looked at the data. I put this slide in here and I've shown it before. But I want you to look and imagine, if you will, what we may have observed. So this is data from one of the control individuals who's been challenged with the challenge virus that we're using in our study, or that we used in our study. And look at the blue line. The blue curve is measuring the virus level in the blood of this one individual in this study. And you can see that by day 4, it starts to rise. By day 10, it peaks. By day 14, it's gone. That's actually pretty consistent across a variety of different individuals. So you would imagine that a placebo individual might have a viremia curve that looks like this. So what we would imagine is then that the individuals on ISLA 101 would have a really reduced area under this curve. Maybe they don't hit the peak viremia, or the duration of viremia is shorter. Any of those will affect the area under the curve and would result in a recommendation to move forward to the second cohort. So the punchline here, the Safety Review Committee met. They looked at the data, they met, and they've seen the unblinded data. This means they know who the placebo is. I don't know who it is. But they know the placebo, they know who's on drug, and based on their review of all of those data, they concluded that administering ISLA 101 is safe, that we achieve the appropriate blood concentration of ISLA 101, and that ISLA 101 dose subjects exhibited reduced viremia compared to the control. As a result of that, there was a unanimous decision by the Safety Review Committee to advance to the phase 2B cohort. A huge relief for me. I'm incredibly excited. I love the idea that we can move forward with this, and really the work really starts now. We need to see if this drug works in this next cohort. The next cohort is going to dose. We're planning to dose it in around January of 2025, so just like 6 weeks from now. We'll be dosing the second cohort. So what have we done? We've dosed the phase 2 study. We did raise some money. I'm happy about that. Securing this $3.5 million gives us the money that we need to conclude this study, to acquire the galidesivir asset, and gives us money into 2026. So we're really set up financially to move forward into the phase 2B cohort. We expect the results from that to come out around Easter. So that really means that over the course of really a year, we would have concluded a phase 1 and then 2 cohorts of this phase 2 clinical trial. Incredibly exciting year. We're getting great data, a super exciting day. So I'm going to pause right there. I think we're going to open this up for Q&A. I do want to point out, here's some contact information. I think most of you know my email address. I'm dfoster@Island Pharmaceuticals. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to talk with you, but I'm going to stop sharing now, Cherie.
Great.
Yeah, and David, I might just jump in since I'm if you like new to the team, new to shareholders. So it's a pleasure to meet you all in today with us sharing such great news. But firstly, considerable thanks and credit, David, to you and the team, who are we 3 years post IPO have got us to this point.
Yeah.
It's pretty exciting. So I've joined, and I'm pleased to share why, and it's simply because this is a significant unmet healthcare need. It affects large consumer populations. I care about consumer health. I spent a career in consumer health, and we believe, and increasingly so after today, a drug that can make a difference, that should make a difference, and we're going to do everything we can to get it to those masses over time. So we're going to double down on what needs to be done and keep everybody up to date with our progress. So hands on, let's get it done.
Excellent.
Well
Thank
done,
you.
Phil.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you for taking the time to do that introduction as well. Nice to hear from you. And thank you, David. As you mentioned a couple of times, it's very, very exciting times. So we'll now just move to the Q&A component of this session. So just a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, you can do so using the Q&A ribbon in the bottom of your screen. And we do have a few questions coming in. So I'll just start with the first one, which is based on this announcement. It felt like the data readout would take, based on the original announcement, it felt like the data readout would take longer to report. Why is it out so quickly?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's true that we anticipated that it was going to take longer, but I give you a real credit to our team and the team at SUNY Upstate, the clinical site. They worked really hard in a very organized fashion to ensure that we were able to get our hands on all of the samples that we needed to analyze very quickly. They had those samples shipped to the analytical labs very quickly. And frankly, the analytical labs did a great job in turning this around. So we were able to get the data compiled and back to the safety review committee really much sooner than we anticipated. And then the safety review committee didn't have to review it for all that long. I think the data were compelling and they were able to relatively quickly make a unanimous decision to move forward. So a lot of things came together, but really it was an organized, hardworking group of people that worked together to get the results done.
Thanks, David. And another question here. You had good data in mice. Now it looks like you have activity in humans. What's the significance of this for Island?
So it's a great question. And it's always a challenge when you see really exciting data in animal models. And the big question is, how does that translate to the human situation? Will it translate well? And there are some indications that translate better than others. Infectious diseases do tend to translate better. However, still a pretty low percent when you look at all the studies that are being done. So the fact that we've been able to demonstrate that there is apparently a reduction in viremia in ISO 101 treated individuals substantially reduces the risk associated with this program. I mean, we've seen some activity right now that's never been seen before with this molecule, right, against this virus. And only a handful of times, that you would see something like this. So it's incredibly exciting for me as we're developing this drug. It really de-risked the program moving forward. We have a lot of work left to do. We're going to need to look at more people. We're going to look at our therapeutic cohort, the phase 2B cohort, but that we've seen data in humans is really exciting.
Great, thank you. And just a question around patient recruitment. How easy or difficult was it to recruit the patients for the study, the 2A study, and what are your recruitment expectations for phase 2B?
So that's a really good question. And, I mentioned that this is a challenge study. So we enroll healthy individuals who volunteer to be infected with a weakened strain of the dengue virus. And I applaud these individuals who sign up and undergo this clinical trial to help us learn more about the infection and ISLA 101. Having said that, they do get paid. We enrolled the first cohort really quickly. The folks at SUNY did an amazing job of advertising, of enrolling and screening individuals. It went very fast to get the first 4. The next cohort, we're going to have 10 individuals. They're already starting working on that at SUNY to obtain a list of individuals who are interested in participating, and they're already putting names on that list of people. So while we're not yet screening, we're probably going to wait until after the new year to get to that. But we don't expect it to be a problem at all. Historically, it's been really straightforward.
Great, thank you. And another one, just can you describe what you expect the next steps to be once you've completed phase 2B?
Completed the phase 2B, yeah. So this would remind everyone, we've completed the phase 2A effectively now. The phase 2B will be the therapeutic cohort that starts in January. We expect the data by around Easter. When we conclude that, let's assume that's positive. We will have an end of phase 2 meeting with the FDA. And really the question the conversation we want to have with the FDA is, one, here's the data that we had. We want them to see what we obtained out of this clinical trial. We also want to say, FDA, this is what we plan to do in our next cohort, our next clinical trial, which is likely a phase 2B clinical trial, phase 2B/3 study that likely will be in endemic countries. The FDA has already told us they are going to want us at some point in time to do clinical trials in countries that are endemic for dengue. So we expect that. But the exact numbers of individuals in that, we don't really know. I think there's a good chance it's a therapeutic trial, but we really need to see the data out of the phase 2B before we can answer that. So there are still some questions. So when we finish the phase 2B, we'll be working with our advisors, talking to the FDA to see what does the next study look like and how are we going to fund that? What's the cost going to be? We'll answer some questions around that.
Great, thank you. And another question here, given the 3.5 million raised, have you considered acquiring other repurposed drugs, even to keep as exclusive options?
So we absolutely have. We have said for a couple of years now, we would like to expand our pipeline, bring in other molecules that again meet with our criteria of being small molecule, antiviral, that comes to us with clinical data, where there may be a PRV, a priority review voucher opportunity. And we've been looking for these molecules for really about 2 years. We do have a binding letter of intent in place right now for an option to acquire a molecule called galidesivir. It's a molecule we're really excited about, and we're working to complete the diligence on that. Our eyes are always open for additional opportunities.
Thank you. And actually, speaking of galidesivir, there's a question here. How long will it take as an estimate to complete the acquisition?
So a lot of that, we're working to get the definitive documents put together. We expect that to happen in relatively short order. The definitive documents would be an option agreement with an asset purchase agreement attached to it. We've already negotiated the terms, so we think that shouldn't be too long. Once we get those documents executed, we would have a 1-year option period. I think we'll do it much sooner than a 1 year, but really the ball is in our court to exercise that option when we think it's appropriate. And I can tell you that we are all very excited to get started on that program, so it'll be at the right time.
Thank you. And then a question here just regarding IP. What patent protection does Island have and for what duration?
Yeah, great question. So, and in fact, it's a really good time to think about IP. For those of you who don't know, I've been a practicing patent attorney for about 20 years, so I think about these issues quite a bit. The IP that we have is licensed from Monash University. We have, because ISLA 101, the molecule itself, was discovered many, many years ago, as is the formulation that we're using right now. We don't have, and nobody has IP to protect that molecule per se. The IP that we have is a method of treating and preventing flavivirus infections with ISLA 101 or variants thereof. We have patent protection out through 2034. We have issued patents in Singapore, Brazil, the United States, Australia, and Canada. And so good jurisdictions where there's typically dengue and other flavivirus infections. Now, one thing to think about, and I always would tell people when they would think about how to expand your IP portfolio, frequently results coming out of clinical trials can give you surprising results. So as we start to see the data coming out of the clinical trial we just run in the next cohort, it wouldn't surprise me if we're given the opportunity to file some new IP. And so I'm looking keenly at what this data is going to look like and see if we can expand our IP that way.
Right. Thank you. Another one here. Is there exposure to potential US tariffs under a new regime?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know how that's going to play out. I haven't seen tariffs discussed with respect to Australia. So I don't know. I'm hearing that they're talking about tariffs for Canada, for Mexico, and for China. I don't know how that's going to affect us. Phil, you may have more to add to that, but I don't see how that's going to affect us from where we are. Or maybe not. Okay.
Okay. And on to the financials. Question here, what's your current cash position?
Yeah, so I mentioned in the presentation that we just completed a raise of $3.5 million. We also just got our R&D tax refund, and so that was another $700,000. We're well positioned to fund the current clinical trial, to acquire galidesivir, move into 2026, so we don't anticipate needing additional capital for a while.
Great. Question back on ISLA 101. In the longer term, how would ISLA 101 be provided to individuals? Like malaria pills, as in daily pills, and for all adults?
Yeah, so we think that the anti-malaria pills are a great analogy for how ISLA 101 could potentially be used and marketed. We think for travelers, for military, for anybody moving or traveling to endemic countries, you would want your ISLA 101 to come along with you. And the way it's an oral pill, so you would take it and assuming this all works the way we want and the way we've seen, you would have protection while you're on the drug. And then when you would return from wherever you are, you would stop taking it. You wouldn't be protected once you're off the drug. So it's really while you're taking it is the time that you have protection.
Thank you. And another one here on ISLA 101, assuming all positive with the trials, when could we expect it to be commercialized?
Yeah. So, we would be looking at starting this phase 3. We'll finish the phase 2B cohort. We'll start a phase 3 study, say, it could be a year from now, and that could take another year. So we're 3 years away probably, because we still have to submit the new drug application. That would take a minimum of 6 months to get reviewed, probably at least 3 years.
Thank you. And one here, which I think is a bit of the question of the hour, with the incoming Trump administration, do you anticipate any challenges with the approval of new drugs, vaccines?
So I've talked to a lot of people about this, and it was, my knee-jerk reaction was, wow, this might not be great. But I will tell you, the more that I talk to people and the more that I think about it, what I'm seeing is there's a big emphasis on reducing bureaucracy and regulations. I think that people will not be skimping on safety, but there is a bit of a buzz in the conversation that says that it may be more streamlined to get things through the FDA. I don't know how that's going to play out, but that's sort of the buzz that I'm hearing right now, is that people are not as concerned as I thought they might initially be.
Great, thank you. And what investor or marketing activities does Island have planned to increase the company's profile?
Doing a lot of what we're doing right now. So we're doing, I just came back from a really positive and successful roadshow in Australia. I was there for a couple of weeks, had a chance to meet with Phil, run around with Chris, and have a lot of excellent meetings. We'll likely be doing more of that, probably not limited to Australia. It wouldn't be surprising to me if we ended up in Singapore or Hong Kong in the not too distant future. And I think the story really resonates well there. They are really struggling with dengue infections, and they have been for a long time. And so to be able to be one of the first people to come there and say, look, we may have a solution, I think is going to be a very, very powerful trip. There are other places that we may go. I talked to people in India, Latin America. I think that all of those are opportunities. In addition, we'll be at conferences. So I'll be at the JP Morgan Biotech Showcase in January. And if anybody's going to be there, please ring me up. I'm happy to meet with you. I'd love to have a conversation. And then informational webinars, anything like this that we can do. I think we're at a time now where we're going to continue to have rapidly developing, very exciting news flow, and we want to keep you guys across that as much as we can. So I think all of that will combine to seeing a lot of us, to be real honest.
Yeah, I think I would add, if I may, this is certainly an inflection point. We've spoken previously, David, and you have very well, and the team, about possibilities and potential, but we're moving now into having demonstrated efficacy, and I think that changes the conversation. So yep. The people, the consumers are interested, the professionals that are interested, partners, it's going to be, the doors are opening largely, and I think we need to go through them and move as quickly as we can. It's a good time to be here.
Agreed.
Thank you. And I think maybe just a couple of more questions, just we're approaching 11:30. One here, would the aim be to take ISLA 101 all the way to commercialization if we are talking 3 years?
Yeah, so, that's a great question, and one we think about a lot. And I think a lot of it depends on the market and the opportunities that present themselves as we are talking to potential partners. We certainly would be open to having conversations with partners. However, if we need to take it all the way, we certainly would be willing to do that too. I think it really depends on the marketplace and what opportunities are presented.
Thank you. And I think one final question, which is probably a good one to end on. What are the next most important milestones for Island?
Yeah, that's a great thought about where do we go from here. So again, soon we're going to be filing the results of the SRC recommendation, the outcome of that meeting with the FDA. We are working very diligently to wrap up the documents associated with the galidesivir program, and we will be talking about that, getting those documents executed. You'll see us start enrolling the phase 2b clinical trial in January. You'll see first dosing of those individuals in that clinical trial likely in January, and then progress through the study until we have the readout, again, probably by April. Within that same time frame, I don't know exactly when. I wouldn't be surprised if we were able to exercise that option on galidesivir. So I think that's also going to be another exciting point. So the next 6 to 9 months, very, very busy, lots of exciting news flow.
Great. Thanks, David. If anyone does have further questions, or if we didn't get to yours today, please feel free to email them through to us at info@islandpharmaceuticals.com. And we'll respond to you via email. Thanks again, David, for your time, and Phil and Chris. Very exciting news today. And thank you everyone for joining us on the webinar. I know it was short notice, so it's great to get such a large turnout. But we'd look forward to keeping you updated on Island's progress over the coming weeks and months ahead. And I'll now invite you all to disconnect. Thank you.